Welcome to another episode of the Christian Business Incubator podcast. I am here with the Commandant, Mr. Paul Bocco.
What is up, Mr. Ken?
Just trying to figure out a new name for you every single
Oh,
time.
dude, we're gonna have to I think we're gonna have to retire that. To be honest, because I don't know, man. I don't know if you're gonna be able to keep. I think you're gonna be starting to recircle, or you're gonna go into like different languages, and then we're not gonna know what you're
That's
talking
okay.
about. Okay, all right.
That's fine. We'll have it, and then there'll be a thesaurus that I'll just start looking up like different names.
I'm gonna have to translate it then, because I won't know if you're like calling me something edifying or de-edifying. I'll be curious. I'll be like,
That's the best part.
what is? Oh my gosh.
Keep you up on your toes. You're gonna come to our meeting next week, be like, "Hey, man, what was that?"
Yeah,
What
I
did you
have
just call me?
download the Babbel app on my phone or whatever it is. I'll be like, he just called you a potato head.
Exactly. That's going to be your new name, Mr. Potato Head.
That's the only German word I know. Kartoffelkopf. I don't even know how I know that. Potato head. My dad was teaching me swear words in German when I was like 7 years old. Like PG, G-rated swear words. So potato head
That's
landed on
hilarious.
the list.
And you still know it to this day. That's
I
fantastic.
do. Isn't that epic? So, what is our topic for today? Because what you just said triggered something, and I don't want to forget it, so I should probably write it down.
Yeah, you write it down while I tell the audience. They don't want to know about our 50,000 words that I'm going to come up with for you. They want to know the topic. The topic is going to be what is the mindset necessary to go from 6 figures to 7 figures? Right. So what is the mindset? There's some people out there who are doing business, they're doing great, but they're like, I don't know how to hit. I'm in a ceiling and I don't know how to break through that ceiling. What do I need to do?
That's a brilliant question, because I struggled with that for quite some time. So I've had 3 or 4 7-figure businesses, and then I've had like a handful of 6-figure businesses. And I know that sounds kind of like ADD-ish, but each move was an optimization, right? So I would identify like a critical flaw in the business model, and then I would pivot. So let's talk about the coaching business or the course business or the creator business or the consulting business. It kind of all means the same thing. Like, we help people effect an outcome, right? So let's keep the context there, although there's obviously things we can learn outside of that context or framework. So going from 6 to 7 figures, there's a lot of things to think about. And one of the principles I want to share that really stuck out to me when I first heard it is I can be spending my time going to a grocery store, walking down the aisle, and picking out pesto for my meal. Or I can be building a 7-figure business. We can hear you clicking, by the way. So, do we need to do anything on the tech side? You all right? You're blurred.
Yes, it should be fine. It'll be blurry, but what ends up happening is it saves all the high
it's
definition.
Good? Okay. I heard you clicking, so I didn't know if we had to stop and you do some tech thing. So y'all good over there?
No, I was taking notes.
You were playing Sudoku while we're doing our podcast. Love it. So I can be looking at. Hey, you're going to make fun of you're going to call me weird names, so you're just going to open yourself up to massive amounts of ribbing throughout. So I could be spending my time looking at pesto, or I could be spending my time building taking our business, adding another $100,000 a month to our business, right? So there's a tension and a time thing. And what reminded me of that is, you call me something I don't know, right? So I can now be spending my time trying to go figure out what the heck that is, or spending my time on our primary objective is a funny example. So that's the first order of business, is how does the Christian entrepreneur spend their time? But really, everybody has the same amount of time, the billionaire and the ditch digger, right? The difference between them is 6 inches, how they think. So then what is the thinking involved with a 6-figure entrepreneur versus a 7-figure versus an 8-figure? And as a Christian entrepreneur, there has to be a founding on biblical principles. Certainly somebody can push their way into seven figures, brute force it as a Christian, but not operating either against biblical principles or not just leveraging biblical principles, right? But I don't believe there's going to be long-term sustainability there. So what are some of the key biblical principles that I've had to go through in optimizing from 6 to 7 figures? Let's talk about that. I think the first one is a reverence for how God made us. So what are my skills? What are my talents? What am I weak at? Right? Somebody will always get farther working in areas of strength than they will areas of weakness. And so many people think they gotta shave off the rough edges. Rough edges are fine, right? That's why the Bible says every joint supplies. So I'm gonna share a story with you about you. So when we were looking to hire you as our integrator, as our COO, you had a meeting with some of our team without me being there, right? And you're like, so tell me about Paul. And so they talked to you about some stuff, and you were probably like, okay. And then you're like, tell me like, what are some negative aspects of Paul, right? Like, I wasn't there, so I'm hearing this. I don't know. You can, when I'm done, I'll let you share your kind of perception of it. And they're like, how did I? Like, they didn't want to, you know. And so you said, how about I share with you what some of the negative aspects of Paul are? And you went through, and you're like, he's probably demanding. He probably gives you a whole bunch of stuff that he wants done yesterday and doesn't really have much compassion for why the stuff isn't done. Right? Okay, you're muted now.
Yeah, no, that's pretty close to the conversation that we were having.
Yes, yeah. And so so in the framework of EOS or rocket fuel, there's a visionary and then there's an integrator, right? The visionary is the one that sees the future, the one that has a million ideas a day. The integrator is the one that keeps the trains running on time, on track, deals with the operational components of the business. So I realized that I'm not very good at the COO integrator operational side. And when I work in there, I can get stuff done. However, I can make a mess, and there's components that are missing, right? Yeah. So one of the hindrances for me going from 6 to 7 figures was not respecting that. So instead of honoring that, what I would do is I would try to read books on it. I would try to get better at it. And it was extraordinarily frustrating for me and the team, and it didn't produce harvest. Make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's so interesting because so many times, and you alluded to this, right? We want to work on our rough edges, but we forget that our primary skill set is the thing that we should be sharpening, right? Our primary gifting. And we make that almost like just a talent, and we don't exercise skill in that talent. So it's pivotal. And now, you know, it's funny when you talk about the interview process, right? Because I remember all of those people were just being really, you never want to bash your boss, right? Especially in an interview process. And I was just like, listen, hold on. I'm pretty sure he's a visionary. I know here are the general things about a visionary. And we just started, when I said it all, they're like,
yeah, they laughed.
This guy gets it. They laughed, and they were just like, how did you know him? Like, did you meet him? I'm like, no, I've just worked with enough visionaries that I get it, right?
Yes.
But that's where I come in with my skill sets, and I'm like, hey, I know how to compliment Paul really well, and this is where I think him and I can jive. Yes. And here's the tensions that we're going to have.
Yes, and those tensions are actually great. Like, it's fine. So here's the other way to look at it: is a helicopter is built for moving people and material through the air very quickly, right?
Yeah.
That's the purpose of the helicopter. I could also use a helicopter as a big old fan, right? Like, I could have a helicopter and open doors, and I could turn it on, and then it would whoosh, it would act as a very powerful fan. But if the helicopter is being used as a fan, it's not in its highest and best operating capacity. And so I believe a Christian entrepreneur, when a Christian is in their operating in their highest and best operating capacity, they are now giving the most glory to the Lord, in my opinion.
Mm.
And they're also trusting the Lord that they can't do it all. So they need puzzle pieces that fit with their unique puzzle piece and or their weaknesses. So when someone tries to do it all, they're basically kicking God out of it, and they're not recognizing that every joint supplies. So the danger to that is I can figure out most things.
Yeah.
Like if you give me a Rubik's Cube, give me a chair and a room, I'll figure it out. It's just a matter of time, period. So because of that, I can get involved with a lot of things. I can figure things out. I can get things done. But now I'm just being like a helicopter that's operating as a nice air conditioner fan unit. And because I'm working there, because I'm picking out pesto, I'm not building, I'm not operating, I'm not doing the things that God called me to do that only I can do. Other people can do these things. I need to be operating in the areas that only I can operate for the good of the company. So a fierce focus on that. And then what kicks in is the corresponding principle, which is who, not me, who, not how. When I was stuck at six figures, that was a blind spot. I was trying to do everything. I was trying to figure everything out. I was signing up for courses that were 1,000 videos that I had to learn all this crap. You know, for example, marketing, paid media buying, Facebook, YouTube, Google, and then the stuff was changing all the time. So now I'm operating over here as a technician in my business. It's always changing, and it's requiring a massive amount of focus and energy to learn and to maintain. And oh, by the way, the first time we do something, we're going to stink at it, right? First time you learn how to drive a stick shift, language, karate, any of that stuff. So now I'm trying to do something that's important in my business. I'm stinking at it, and it's loading me down with burden and seeping my focus and energy. So the Bible says, who, not you, who, not how. And it talks about this in a couple places. Number one, with Moses. Talks about Moses leaned on his staff. He leaned on Aaron. In Acts, it talks about the disciples. One day they just were frustrated. They're like, man, this is stupid. We shouldn't be spending our time feeding the poor, doing all this nonsense. And so the Lord had them appoint leaders so that they can maintain focus on what only they could do, which was ministering, preaching, teaching, evangelizing. So that is very clear, yet Christian entrepreneurs don't do it. And that's why they stay stuck at six figures and they're really frustrated. So then the third thing is, once we have those couple things in place, an acknowledgement that I need to work on my giftings and in my giftings. Number two, the second order consequence of that is, holy smokes, I need to figure out who I need, and it's who, not me, and who, not how. Then we've got to get really good at making decisions, and really it's prioritization. It's focus. So before we get into that, was there anything you wanted to say on those other points?
Yeah, well, I think for those first two, you've alluded to it, and I think people really need to hear this, is that one of the secret powers that are able to do those two things is focus. You mentioned it several times. Like, one of the things that I think pushed you from 6 to 7 figures, and the thing that you're pushing me is like, Ken, stay absolutely focused. Like when you're doing, just do one task at a time, one thing at a time. What's the one thing? And if there's a secret power that you have, is the power of focus, of just, I'm going to finish this thing. So when you said, hey, if you put me in a room with a Rubik's Cube, I'm going to figure it out. I'm actually like, yeah, Paul is an extremely focused individual. And I think that's what happened. What the fault or the mistake that a lot of six-figure entrepreneurs make is that they're trying to do too much and are not focused enough when doing those two things that you mentioned. Yep.
Two mental models that help me with that is, number one, what's the difference between a race car and a sedan, right? The race car has less, right? There's no radio. There's no seats other than the driver's seats. It's like engine, transmission, drivetrain, straps, gas pedal, steering wheel, boom, shifter. Less. Yeah. Second thing, which these are focus principles, is what color does a good mechanic paint their floor? Mm-hmm. White.
Yeah.
So they can see the drips. Simple scales, complex fails. Most entrepreneurs see that in terms of their business. I see that in terms of my brain. Because I'm
Yeah.
a visionary and I got 1,000 ideas a day, I've got to have systems to parse and prioritize. And even with my systems, you know, Ken, I have weakness in that area. Like I'm not
Yeah.
perfected in it. I stink at it in many cases. But that's what's great about having the visionary integrator framework is that then all that can be poured through a sieve, a filter, and deliberate constraint to produce clarity and focus. So for the entrepreneur, I think one of the primary things, getting back to step one, is they have to understand, are they a visionary or are they an operator?
Yeah.
And, you know, rocket fuel, EOS, great stuff on that. You can take a look at it. But it's real simple. It's just look at, you know, what you're doing well. Look at how your brain works. If you got a bunch of ideas all the time, you're probably a visionary. And then you have to focus. So how do we focus? Well, there's two sides of it. There's what we look at and then what we ignore. So one of the things that I do to help focus is I remove things from my life and from my vision. That's why I've got like 20 of these shirts. I don't want to distract my focus to be thinking through, you know, it's funny because Christian, like in the Christian, non-denominational Christian space, flashy clothes is a thing, right? And I always kind of chuckle at that because there's an opportunity cost to that. And I'm not judging. Like I'm saying for me, I want to maintain my focus. So I simplify my food. I simplify my routines. I simplify my clothing. I simplify my life as much as I can. And then I also don't, when I'm working, I don't have things distracting me. I don't have a guitar. I don't have a, golf clubs, a pool table, pictures of my stuff that I want, right? I don't have any of that because if I have a guitar in my office and I look over, now I'm going to have to be resisting. I don't want to play guitar. I don't want to play. But if I remove that, then it's just not even there. So that's part of it. But then ultimately, so focus is like, there's an energy component of it as well, right? So that's sleeping, eating clean, biologically being optimized. So the biological brain just works better. You can solve a lot of focus by just having clean biology. But then ultimately, even if we do all that stuff, we still have to make the decision, what do I put my focus on?
Yeah.
Right? So we'll talk about that next.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that you again, we talked about some of your weaknesses, but I think the two strengths you do have is focus and the ability to make decisions very quickly. And you're just like, and I remember you told me one time, you're like, Ken, what makes someone go to 6 to 7 figures is decision making. How quickly you make decision making. Wealthy people make decisions fast. And then you started walking through that process. So walk us through that process very quickly of like, how do we make that happen?
Yeah, so wealthy people make decisions fast and they're very slow to change them. Broke people, not, good-hearted people, but non-wealthy people, takes them forever to make a decision and then they change it fast. It's a complete inversion of James 4, don't be double-minded. So it's very simple, right? If somebody's at 6 figures listening to this, they're familiar with algorithms, optimization, pixels. The way those things work is they have a target and they optimize for that target. It's like a autopilot in a plane. It has a GPS coordinates and then it pings on track, off track, and it calibrates its flight to get there. So in business, we have to have the proper targets. And once we have those targets in place, then the decision making becomes easy because all we have to do is we have to look at target, look at potential idea, initiative, project, action, investment of time, and say, does this thing move me toward or away from goal?
Yeah.
Done. Now, here's the other side of it, or continuing along that path. Anybody can say no to stupid things. Like drinking and driving doesn't take a genius to say that's kind of stupid. What separates the 6 from the 7-figure entrepreneur is they're able to say no to really good ideas, projects, initiatives, to only leave room for the exceptional ideas, products, or projects, actions.
Yeah.
Because if we say yes to, on a scale of 1 to 10, a bunch of 6s, well, the opportunity cost is then we don't have focus for the 8s and 9s and 10s.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing that I see with the 6-figure people. They're kind of running around like a chicken with their head cut off. They think more is the answer, when in fact it's less. It's streamline, it's cutting, it's culling, it's elegance in products, in team, in systems, in processes. Less is more. And then when you have all these things aligned, now you're working in your skill set, depending on team to complement A players to complement your skill set with a simple, elegant business model. And then the goals are calibrated and everybody's in alignment. And that's what we're working on as a team as well.
Yeah.
Internally. And that's what's going to take us from 7 figures to 8 figures and beyond. Is these same principles just deployed at a higher level. It's one thing for me to do it. And that's what I had to do from 6 to 7. But now we're at a place where we have a team of, 10, 15 people, 18 people that we have people. How many?
18.
18 people. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
18 people that we now have to align and get on the same page.
Yeah.
And when we don't do that, the P&L suffers because there's a lot of slop. The culture suffers. There's a lot of confusion. You have turnover, you have churn, people coming, people going. And so, that's kind of like a multiple 7-figure thing, but it starts with clean thinking. Clean thinking. Someone will not progress to 7 figures if their head looks like spaghetti. It needs to look like a waffle.
Yeah. And you know what I love about that, Paul, is especially when you think about that clean thinking, one of the thinkings that you've actually helped me through is this fear of thinking I have to do more, right? And you talk about less is more, right? Well, sometimes people don't want to do less because they're afraid that if they do less, they're not going to be as productive or they're not going to hit their bottom line revenue, right? Like all these fears. But the reality is like, no, actually you'll double or sometimes even triple, right? When you do less, right? Because you've streamlined it. You're like that race car analogy you use, and you're going way faster in that sphere of influence. So that's been a big thing when I think about that mindset shift of like, no, how do we continue to do less so that we can be, and it goes back to the niche, right? Like who are your target audience? Who are you trying to hit? Because the more you do less, the more productive you're going to be and the more simple things are going to be. And you can skyrocket to the next level.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll share this story. I was in a mastermind with 7-figure guys and gals. And there's a exceptionally famous and successful dude who was in there. And I knew who he was. I hadn't met him, but I met him and was kind of just visiting with him. And he had asked questions of the leader of the mastermind. And he had all these different things going on. All these crazy things. And so they were talking, and he's like, well, the leader's like, what is your goal? Like, what do you really want? And so he explained it. And so the guy's like, why don't you just do that?
Yeah.
And he started thinking, he goes, and he got a little bit of more input. And in our Entrepreneur Unleashed or Upgraded, whatever it is, we have an email series. I talk through this story. So the guy sat there, and at the time, he was just eating potatoes for some random reason. So he went up, he ate a potato, he came back down, and then he just vanished. Like he left the event. It was halfway through the first day. Well, that was Alex Becker, and he created Hyros. That was the germ, the seed of that alignment and that triangulation and simplification. Because before that, he was doing some e-commerce stuff, he was doing some, product stuff, he was doing all this other stuff. And Hyros was what he really wanted to do. He wanted to build that tracking platform, which today is probably an 8-figure business, right? So anybody in any Christian, non-Christian coaching, software as a service, this is a universal principle, but it draws from The Bible,
Yeah.
right? Paul said, this one thing I do. Jesus had one focus. These guys were focus machines. So to go from 6 to 7 figures, you got to work up here. It's not a technique. It's not a tactic. The things that
it's not a new tool.
It's not a new tool. It's not a shiny object. That's the other thing they do is they're all scatterbrained. But the reason that they're susceptible to that is because they don't have these first principles in place where they're working on identifying themselves, their team, and having goals that they're saying, hey, will this move me toward or away? The things that I did to grow from 6 to 7 were not duplicated systems. I drew from different coaches, but I also filtered it through my strengths and my weaknesses and my perception and my ability and willingness to want to serve the market. Like our current funnel is no one uses a similar funnel. Now, I'm not saying model our funnel. I heard a coach once say to me, he said, Paul, if you want to copy me, what you'll do is not copy me, because what this guy did was not copy everybody else. So that liberated me to be like, okay, what makes the most sense? So our current funnel, we have a manifesto. There's like 5-6 pages before someone even opts in. And then we have them watch an 1.5-hour video. And then we have them do all this other stuff before they hop on the phone. And I started that because when I was first doing the calls, I'm like, man, I don't want to talk to somebody unless they're, a real high quality lead. Right. Yeah. So our media buyer, just the other day, he's like, Paul, I still haven't seen anybody with that type of a model structure, a funnel structure. So, also one of the things that we do is we have built in recurring income into our model, which for some reason most coaches don't do. I don't understand why. So, but when you can have clarity, then you can look at the business and say what's working, what's not working, and you can optimize the business, right? In business, the numbers tell us what to do. So we just do more of what works and less of what doesn't. And to do that, you don't need a coach. You don't need some secret weapon. You don't need some shiny object. You just need to think and look and be like, right? And you can be open to, hey, these guys are doing this. These ladies are doing that. Here's an idea. There's an idea. But you don't just follow somebody and not think and not create, right? So 6 to 7 figures is about focus, but it's about focusing on the right thing. I spent a lot of time being severely and intensely focused on the wrong thing, on things that aren't needle movers.
Yeah.
And the thinking that got somebody to 6 figures is not the thinking that gets them to 7. Another trap that I fell into is I got all this cash piling up, and then I got off on all these rabbit trails. Okay, now what do I do? I spent like a year and a half of my life looking into like investments and all this stuff because I had a deep desire to be a good financial steward and leave an inheritance for the kids. I was intensely focused on that, but I violated the principle of who, not me, and who, not how. So I thought about it. I prayed about it. I'm like, hey, what do the wealthiest families do? Well, they get a family office. Okay, what's a family office? It's a dude or dudette with an entire team that just handles all this stuff. So that's what we did. Got a family office. And I'm like, okay, now I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And those people are doing it way the heck better than I ever could. So again, who, not me, at the high. So as an entrepreneur, you always got to push into your goals, your strengths, your team, your goals, and simplification. And your goals, you got to be pressing out. The Bible says he'll give us above and beyond what we can ask or think, right? So what are you asking and thinking for? Good pesto to make a good pasta? Or are you asking and thinking for an idea that will revolutionize your industry?
Yeah. Man, Paul, that is awesome. Excellent stuff. People who are listening to this, they're probably like, I need more of this. I need to figure out more of this stuff. And the best way for you to do that, if you want to know, is go check out our website. We have close to 300 testimonials. We have the articles, the manifesto that you were talking about, the Christian Upgraded articles are there in the emails, where you can learn how to go from 6 figures to 7 figures. And you could also check out our YouTube channel. You could find all this at ChristianEntrepreneurinc.com. And I encourage all of you who are listening to this, go check it out, because Paul has done what you are trying to do. And we want to make sure that you are doing this, not just for yourself, but for the kingdom of God. So with that being said, we're going to leave you with that. And I hope you have a great day. And
God bless.